They loved working with us because everything was very, very personalized. They could get onto WhatsApp and message me, and I was there, right? I mean, being the founder of the company, they loved having interaction with me if their delivery went wrong, right? I mean, they love that fact that, that the founder himself is there and not some random guy in a call center is going to help them out for this.
Our featured speaker today is an experienced global entrepreneur and software engineer, passionate about shaping the way companies think about streamlining operations through automation, robotics, and data analytics. Qazi, I know I'm trying to summarize you all into one sentence, and that's not fair given your vast journey, but it is such a pleasure to have you as our featured guest today. Thanks so much for being willing to share your journey with us.
You're most welcome, Nancy, and thank you so much for having me over. That was a perfect introduction.
Well, I'm glad you think so. I'll kick it to you for a couple minutes and then just let us know when you're ready for questions.
So basically, my journey has been pretty amazing for myself. Like, I really enjoyed the whole journey, and I think it's still going on. I'm still en route to whatever the destination is gotta be, and exciting. Looking forward to it. It started in a way, entrepreneurship kind of happened to me out of passion. I think that's how it happens to most of the entrepreneurs out there today. Back in my days. We didn't have Facebook back then. I started working when I was 15 years old. That's when I had my first job. I was really inspired by people older to me at that time who used to go to work or had their own business. I read a lot of books about Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and the story between Wozniak and Steve Jobs and stuff like that really inspired me. Thankfully, I had a very supporting background as well, like my father especially. That time, obviously, you have a guardian and you can't really do things without their permission. And I come from Pakistan, so we kind of have like a very conservative a thinking process here, mostly where parents don't really want you to indulge into the working category until and unless you actually are through from your college. And I think that's all over the world, but in Pakistan it's more focused that way. You're supposed to have like a college degree before you do that. But I kind of thought that at that point, and I still think education is a very important part of everyone's life, and I'm still pursuing it till now. But the schooling system, it kind of doesn't teach you stuff about being out there. It teaches you all the primary things that you need, the primary education that you need, and the knowledge that you need to open up your mind and go forward and focus in the world. But I think that specific time which you need to spend in the market with the people is kind of missing when you spend those 4 years at college. Somehow, after that, you also have to do another year worth of internship and training to understand how things work. So, that things that didn't go too well with me back in the day. I went to my father, I told him about this, about my thought process, and he was like, if I think that this is how it should work out for me, then I should go ahead and do it. Yeah, and then I just applied for a couple of job. I landed up at a call center back in the days, and that's where it all started. 2 years down the line, I raised my first investment. I set up my own call center in Pakistan. That was my first startup. It was probably like the third or fourth biggest call center. Eventually became to be that in Pakistan. It had around more than 160 employees. I ran the operations for around 2 to 3 years, approximately before almost 3 years. And after that, I kind of liquidated my shares, my vested equities, and I shifted to the Middle East, where I set up my first consultation company. Basically, my call center was also doing outsourcing work for technology companies at that time, which landed me into the technology zone. So in Dubai, I set up my first consultation company, it used to consult about technology and automation and robotics. Our office was located in Dubai Internet City. Thankfully, that place was buzzing with technology at that time. We were one of the pioneers there, and companies like Red Hat and Microsoft were just like next door neighbors. So we partnered up with them, worked with a lot of huge clients in the Middle East, like Emirates Airline and Emirates Boats. These are the guys, like one of the biggest yacht manufacturers there. Consulted them on automation and robotics and stuff like that. So kind of industrial automation at that point. I did that for 9 years. Then the recession hit. In 2009, 2011, things went very, really bad in the UAE. As a company, we kind of pivoted into property because, property was the hottest thing there at that time. And after the recession ended, the drawback that it left behind was that the property industry kind of vanished from the air. 90% of our clientele just went down. It was a very bad situation to witness. A lot of our huge clients ended up having like jail terms at that time because they couldn't pay up with their loans. It had like a very bad impact on our business as well. Unfortunately, at that time, I was very, very young. I was approximately 22 or 23 years old. I just didn't have the experience at that time to understand on taking the right decision. And I probably did something which is, if you go to anybody today and ask for advice for entrepreneurship, they're going to tell you not to be attached with your products or not to be emotionally attached with the startup that you make. I was very, very emotionally attached to whatever I was doing at that time. And I didn't pivot to something else. I thought, things are going to get better maybe in the 6, 7, 8 months. The business was really, really good. I had the capital. I thought I could keep paying my staff and all the colleagues the salary. But unfortunately, things didn't go like that. Eventually, after a year of a very hard struggle, things started looking really, really bad. And I kind of shifted back to Pakistan at that point, not because business couldn't pick up again, but because I saw a lot of better opportunity in Pakistan based on the kind of experience I had. And that was a huge learning curve for me. So I came back to Pakistan. I set up my third company this time around called Third Venture Interactive, which was again a consultation firm. Started consulting in Pakistan locally and then internationally out of Pakistan, which is Middle East and Europe and USA. And it was a pretty good ride for the next 7 years, where I consulted like the top dogs in Pakistan. I still consult them. The top banks like the National Bank is a government bank. I could name a few of them that I've been consulting. Other than that, I've been consulting local startups. Almost all of them have raised good amount of monies. Baikia is one of them, which raised 22 million in total. Dastagir is one of them, which raised 5 million. There's another startup in Europe, Jogo, which my company consults. They have raised $5 million. And while I was running Third Venture Interactive, I also kind of started incubating startup ideas with different people, like co-founders within the ecosystem of Third Venture. So in that a period, I was able to find three startups. I was founder for them. One of them got acquired. Two of them, I kind of exited out of them by selling the technology behind it. All of them were pretty high traction startups where, we had a good, maybe around 2,000 to 3,000 plus customer base of and around 500 to 600 orders a day. And so it was pretty good technology startups as well. And that gave me a lot more experience into how things are run and how investments are raised and how you build traction, you build retention rates, and you make sure that the startup goes on the line the way it's supposed to go. I'm not going to go into a lot more detail into that. It's going to just drive the conversation a lot more longer. But yeah, so after doing that, right now I'm a vice president at Cloud Primero. It's a Netherlands-based company. I merged my portfolio with this company, which was Third Venture Interactive. We are now working more towards the same point where I'm looking at innovations and new ventures. Every kind of the technology scope that the company has comes under me. I strategize, plan, and work with the technology team. I lead them, and we come up with new ideas. We help startups raise their investments, make their MVPs, or help them with the product, with the help that they need. And we've been doing that with some really cool startups locally and in the EU. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it about how things are. And I'm looking forward to taking this journey forward and towards its destination, and still learning along the way. I hope I didn't bore you guys.
Not at all. I'm honestly like just going through which of our questions you've already addressed. I really appreciate you giving us such a great kind of comprehensive background of kind of how you got started and some highlights along the way. I actually was wondering, given that you've had experience starting companies in multiple countries, I was wondering if you could talk about some of the unique challenges you faced in those markets, either, just because the laws there were vastly different or just sort of culture adoption to new ideas. if you have an opinion on this, which country maybe felt like it had the most welcoming, friendly sort of startup culture to start a business in?
That's a very interesting question, and yeah, definitely, the culture is very, very different in in countries when you go in with business ideas, specifically if you're talking about startups. So, if I'm going to talk about the most inviting environment, I think it has to be, and I haven't actually incorporated or established a company in that environment, but I know for a fact the most inviting and the place where the most opportunity strikes for startups is definitely USA. Would say I have had experience with working a couple of startups that were located at Silicon Valley. I currently work with some VCs that are located at Silicon Valley. And the kind of support system I see there is amazing. I mean, coming from Pakistan, back in 2014 when I launched my first startup, we didn't have the ecosystem of investors or even the idea of somebody running a startup and the investor investing into that startup. It wasn't, it was an alien thing to do. It was something like people would tell you, I mean, what are you guys doing? I mean, people used to tell me that I should go and find a real job. The concept that comes with a startup, see, basically when we have a technology startup per se, like Uber or Airbnb, so you don't have this income stream which is very traditional business like, so you don't have like a positive revenue stream coming in every month. You don't earn money as such, so basically you are just burning down your capital for the next 2 3 years where you build traction, and then eventually you show profits during, maybe in the next 4 years, where you say that, we're going to go IPO at a certain point, and we're going to give investors 4x or 5x returns. So stuff like that didn't make sense to people in Pakistan at that time. So they thought, this may be some kind of a fraud mechanism where, a guy comes in and he just shows profits on paper and just shows some numbers, and how can this particular person be profitable when he doesn't even make profits on the money that he's investing in. The customers that they acquire are basically a loss making mechanism, because the acquisition cost that these guys have is way more than what they're earning from these customers, and the recovery cost attached to it basically takes more than 6 months to actually have a good acquisition recovery from a particular customer that joins in. So these metrics didn't make much sense in Pakistan, which is why in 2013-14 it was very difficult to land deals here in this region. Thankfully, at that time, a lot of people picked up the startup in the startup scene, and went through a lot of struggle. I was a part of that era as well, where I had my own startups and those struggling phases as well, where you have to bootstrap the whole thing, and you're serving like around 900 customers a month, and you have to pay it by, for all the expenses and everything by yourself, and then not being a VC yourself, it's difficult to do that, controlling the employees. So your employee force goes more than 99 people. You have more than 100 people working for you in that particular startup, and then you have to manage those expenses and just wait for some fine day that you're going to hit up an investment, and things are going to go fine. But then again, you don't have that environment here, and things never happen like that. Same story would go for UAE, for the Middle East. But the Middle East had a lot. The thing that would differentiate a country like Pakistan from the Middle East would be that, in Middle East you had access to all kind of people in the world. So when I was there, I still go there. I have a lot of contacts and a lot of people I met back then. I met people from Silicon Valley who actually just came to Dubai for touring Dubai Internet City, and I bumped into them. A lot of them had their offices there, and I met them there. I met Kareem and Uber there as well. They had their offices, and they came down. The ecosystem there, I mean, specifically if you look at the country, isn't really tax savvy. I'm talking about back then. I'm talking about 2015, 16, maybe 13. But then the people there, they came in from Europe, they came in from USA, and they built that ecosystem around there. And now you could see how things have scaled in the Middle East. And you can go in there, and you have startups like Retailio, you have startups like Noon, which have raised millions of dollars. And we're looking at some really potential unicorns down the line, maybe in the next 2 3 years. We're definitely going to see a couple of them from this region, specifically Pakistan and the Middle East. India is another story, by the way. They understood the whole game. They jumped on the bandwagon really quick. And we already saw, how Paytm became one of the biggest things around there, and that's really inspiring. The ecosystem they have in India. But yeah, there are countries that catching up now, like Pakistan. We have like a really strong game going on. We raised around 206 million accumulatively just in the last 6 7 months. So the startup scene is picking up. Investors are coming in. We have people like Sequoia in the market now, investing in on startups. We have startups early stage VCs in the country now. So now things are a lot different. It's more inviting per se. But again, as per your question about what would be the most inviting and easy place to start on, I would still think it's definitely USA. I mean, the Silicon Valley is the hub of all of this. I mean, that's where it all started, and I think that's where it is still is the best place to start at. But then I just wanted to give you guys a history of how things work in this part of the world where I am.
Thank you so much. I always find it so interesting to hear about the different ways that culture can influence entrepreneurship and creating new companies. I think it's fascinating. I think it is also really impressive how you've been able to operate and get a good understanding of so many different cultural areas. Now, one thing as a robotics engineer myself, one thing I often have to sort of answer that questions that come to me, it tends to revolve around automation and the impact of it, obviously in people's day-to-day lives. But what I was hoping to hear, if you had some thoughts on how automation and robotics and newer technologies are actually influencing the operations of businesses, especially as they start to scale, and how they can use this automation to sort of, assist the company in various ways.
That's a very interesting thing that you asked, and I'm happy that you touch upon that. I think it's revolutionizing everything, especially when it comes to technology and it comes to robotics. A lot of people think that is taking over jobs in some way, and human race is going to suffer. But the way I see it is just that it's making things a lot more easier for everyone. And let's talk about it. And let's say car manufacturer. Maybe that'll be a very typical example. Let's say flower trader. So I actually had a client who was the biggest flowers importer in UAE. These guys have this business operations where they used to get flowers from Netherlands in UAE, and then they used to sort it up, and then they used to throw it forward to different clients that they had. So places like Burj Al Arab and Burj Dubai, the tallest building in the world, they were their client. And it was like a very painful process because these products are perishable, so you had like a lot of wastage, which would eventually mean a lot of losses on your products. And all of this was manual. I'm talking about 2012. And so we came in, we automated the whole process. We put in robotics where the counting of flowers became something which happened through robots now. It used to count stems, and a process which used to take them around 45 minutes was now done in like 5 minutes. And you could imagine multiplying that with the whole year and see the amount of time only this part saves. Second, we automated their warehouse processes. So now you don't need, once the count is done, which is automatic in under 5 minutes, put this into a box. That box goes into the warehouse. Your inventory is updated at the same time, telling you what you have in your inventory right now, at what time it came in, who sent it to you, what airline was used, how much money was spent in getting this thing in UAE. So what was your cost? What's your target market price? All of that is calculated as well and put it into your financial systems. And now you have a product ready to sell in your warehouse, and you know when it's gonna perish out, when it's gonna be something that's gonna come into wastage. So you would be able to sell your stock based on which one gotta be sold out first, based on when you got it. So now this way the sales process got automated, and it was really really efficient. And maybe something where they would spend hours and hours every day was now just done automatically. And I think now it's such a part of their life, and a lot of different companies which adapted to technology, that they have started taking it for granted. So you don't even think about this, so you already know that what's out there. But before robotics or technology came in, this was a manual process which would take you hours and hours to figure things out. But now all of this thing, it comes under the robotic umbrella. You have the option to save probably, if not thousands, then hundreds of hours a year. And also at the same time, once you save that, you increase your income criteria where your revenue increases potentially by maybe 20, 30, 40%. And I've seen that happen with different companies that I've consulted, where their efficiency were increased by more than 50%, but at the same time the revenues that they were generating, maybe increased by more than 40%, which was amazing because they adapted to it. And then once they realized that they have done it, they stopped spending time in things that didn't matter. So they started focusing on sales, getting more customers, going out more into public rather than firefighting every day back at the workplace, trying to find out, which stock is expired, what they need to do next. So, using prediction and analytics, they know like what they need to do for the next 1 year as well. So, I mean, that's just a small example of how robotics and technology can be used. Just that you need to leverage technology, not submit to technology. If you're leveraging it to do what you're doing right now, I think that's the best way forward. A lot of people do the mistake of actually not understanding this fact that you can leverage whatever you're doing and not can't count yourself out. So people think when technology comes in, jobs goes out. So, human capital goes to waste because technology is in now. But I don't think that's the case. It's just that it's just making you more efficient. So where you spend 4 hours a day doing something, you're gonna do like, spend like an hour only. You have 3 more hours to do something else. That's what I think. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely in a very detailed way. And I'm going to be honest, Spencer is definitely the robotics engineer analytical mind here. So a little bit of it was, well, I'll be honest, some of it was over my head. But I'm also really fascinated about how these things change behavior. So I appreciate you just kind of going into the layers of that. I wanted to read a comment that Andrew made on the questions and discussion channel too. He just doesn't have audio right now. He was saying East and West Coast appear to be easier, whereas in second and third tier small cities, it tends to be a lot more challenging to raise capital, which feels very similar to other emerging countries. So I don't know if that's, been your experience, but I just wanted to make sure you got a chance to hear from him.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, now it's a lot more easier, honestly, everywhere in Bangladesh. And I know, especially through my session with MIT earlier this year, I met a lot of different people as well. And before that as well, I was working at one, not directly working with them, but working with a team that was working with Rocket Ventures back then, which had their office in Bangladesh as well. And now things have picked up, even Bangladesh, Pakistan, the Middle East. We now have a lot of opportunities going on. So if you have something going, you have good traction. I think you have good numbers on papers. You have a good business plan with you and a good pitch deck. I think you would be able to walk away with substantial investments to start, give a start to your ideas. But yeah, as I said before, it was very difficult to do something like this back in the days, maybe 5, 6, 7 years back from now. It was almost impossible. It was, people doing these things were actually bootstrapping it and just waiting for magic to happen. A lot of people went into abyss, just totally stopped doing this and submitted to something else. A lot of people I know who wanted to change a lot of things around them are no longer pushing it because life comes in between. You have to pay bills and stuff, and then they just opted for something else. And yeah, I mean, it was very difficult at one time, but now I think it's a lot better. And if somebody wants to pursue it in these regions, I think this is the perfect time to do it. We are definitely gonna have unicorns coming up from these regions very, very soon, within the next 4 or 5 years at most.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. I really appreciate it. Transitioning a little bit, I actually wanted to ask you what prompted your interest in attending the MIT Boot Camps program? And I'm particularly interested to ask you that question because it's clear that you started your career really early. So I'm just wondering why that was the right choice for you at the time.
To be honest, when I got to know about something like this, I've seen a lot of different programs as well, which keeps popping up, and it never got my interest because I'm already in the game, right? I already know how startups work. I already know how to do what this program teaches you to do. It never interested me, but when it came to MIT and somebody referred the program to me, and I saw how what happens here. Number one, the most the thing that is right, and the reason why I pursued it was because of the MIT tag. Obviously, I mean, it was something that MIT was doing. Number two, based on my research with people around me, I did find out that there are a lot of different things that MIT does in this program, and a lot of different methodologies that they talk about, which usually people don't look at when they are doing their stuff. So I mean that kind of intrigued me, and then I just went ahead and applied, and then I made it in, and after the program, I mean I'm just fast forwarding it. I did learn a lot of different things. I mean I got a kind of like a new perspective of looking at things, I would say. I mean, about innovation, it added a lot of value. It was in what it had to offer overall. The team experience was great. For someone with the experience that I have, I think even then the team experience was great because I had a team, and and that team, you don't control people, right? As an entrepreneur, as a leader, you are in the habit of controlling things in whatever you are doing, because you have the you have the steering wheel in your hand. I think that team environment that MIT gives you, and this is a part of their program, where they have five people that you don't know at all, they're strangers to each other, and you just start working together, and then one of you become a leader every week, and then you have to listen to what other guys have to say, and then lead in a way where you also make your point go through, but then also at the same time not hurt egos around. And I think that was the best part of the whole program, because it kind of I hadn't had that experience in a long time, so it kind of refreshed a lot of different things, and showed me some ways to get things done without actually appearing to control things, but at the same time be able to control things. I'm not sure if I'm able to get through my point exactly, but I hope I did.
You absolutely did. I totally see where you're coming from, especially as technical entrepreneur, like someone who's used to being in the detail. I know what it's like to feel like, you've got to have the very detailed minutia of everything moving how exactly you want it to. And I get that impression all the time. So it's cool to hear about how you sort of found that benefits from actually not being in that level of control, and then found ways to sort of still get the ideal goals from what you were doing.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Kane at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code Voyage. That's vidops.io, referral code Voyage. Now back to the show.
Now, Andrew raised two questions I'm just going to read out to you. Do you recommend getting VC funding versus bootstrap? And two, what specifically were your key takeaways from the program?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, actually. The first question about VC and bootstrapping. I mean, as much as you need investors to invest and the VCs to get into the game for you to make it big, it's also substantially very important to understand that once the VCs enter, it kind of gets difficult to pursue your passions. Things get more about numbers at that point. When investors come in, when VCs come in, they want to see numbers. They want to see, if you said that you're going to have 10,000 people getting onto the application in 6 months, so you need to get 10,000 people on the application in 6 months. If you said that your acquisition cost is going to be $2 per person, it has to be $2. And then if you said that your recovery rate is going to take 4 months on each customer, then you need to make sure that that happens as well. And to make sure that it happens like that, you need to compromise on a lot of different things that you would do when you're bootstrapping things. So just for an example, and I'm going to give a personal example here. So I was bootstrapping one of my startup called Delivery Genie, with a startup that would get things delivered to you anywhere you are in locally. within 30 minutes. So we have strategically placed the delivery logistic people, and they were strategically placed all over the city. Anybody who had anything, if they required anything at all, they just get onto the app and they type in, maybe they want coffee at 2 a.m. in the morning, and then somebody nearby would get that. They're gonna go grab that coffee and bring it to you. So that was the whole idea. So you could get anything that you want within the city within 30 minutes. It kind of blew up, right? I mean, within 2 months, we had like huge traction going on. We had like around 400 orders a day. I mean, that's where we were heading on to. For a bootstrap startup, something which came out of a hobby, that was too much to handle at that point. So, we kind of like, it was very hectic to do. So there came a point where I had to decide between the quality of service that we were providing. So, the customers that we had, it became like a family, So these guys really knew all of us. I knew all of them. We had sentiments, we had business attachments. So a lot of businesses started using us. They said, they got on board with us, and people used to order for cake, and then we knew that a particular business sells really good cake, and then we used to get cake from them. Then these guys started delivering stuff, and then they signed up with us. So we had like a good corporate deal going on as well. They trusted us with things. They loved working with us because everything was very, very personalized. And they could get onto WhatsApp and message me, and I was there, right? I mean, being the founder of the company, they loved having interaction with me. If their delivery went wrong, right? I mean, they loved that fact that that the founder himself is there and not some random guy in a call center is going to help them out for this particular stuff. And that help me build a very personalized customer base that even today, after 6 years, is in direct touch with me. We still meet and we still talk, and they still talk about the experiences they had working with Delivery Genie back in the days. Now, that was a completely bootstrap thing. The things I did there was not for revenue generation. I actually made no money for more than 2 years running this business. But all I did was offer convenience to these customers, and I just kind of changed the way they would do business. I mean, not the entire world or the country, but only those particular people, because I was so directly in touch with them that their feedback allowed me to change things based on what would suit them. And that helped me build a business environment where I was able to customize my services and my offering based on what they wanted. And it became so personalized for these people. They just thought they can't do business anymore without us. And today a lot of those home-based businesses that all got onboarded with us, they are like huge businesses in Pakistan. One of them is called Easy. It's like a very famous food chain today in Karachi, and they have like two different branches, and they have like a huge footfall of customers, and they started with us. So that's the kind of impact you want to make as an entrepreneur mostly, and that's what makes you happy. But then now in the same picture, when you bring in investors, because I did, at that point, that passion just dries up because you don't have time to follow your passion anymore. You're not looking at making impact. You're not looking at helping XYZ business grow. At that point, you are trying to grow your own numbers, not your customers' numbers. And that's where I think, you have to take a call. I mean, I am not saying that's a wrong thing to do, but then again, it kind of makes you compromise on the passion that you have of changing things or innovating things. That kind of stops when the investors comes in, and then the talks, the meetings that you have with investors, the board meetings, the weekly meetings, they are all centered around the numbers. How much sales did you do this week? How much do we have to do next week? What are the figures we are looking for? Because we just raised a round 2 months back, so we gotta go raise round number two now, and that have to happen within 2 months. So the application, where is our technology right now? We need to have 10,000 active user base right now. So if we don't have it, we won't be able to raise another $1 million. That's the kind of conversations that you're gonna be having, instead of the conversations of a bootstrap to startup, where you sit down and you talk about, okay, so XYZ actually have a problem where the customers are not able to get fresh cakes. How can we solve that out? That's the conversation you miss out on. So I hope that kind of make my point. But then again, at the same time, I'm not saying investment is bad. It's just that you need to decide like what's the priority for you. And bootstrap the startup doesn't have to, it doesn't mean they can't be profitable. Not at all. A startup I did, it was called Khalis Daily. It used to procure fresh ingredients from farms directly and deliver it to customers. So, taking out the middleman from between farm to table concept. And it was profitable from the first day. So it was a very simple model. We used to connect customers with farmers. We should take out the middleman, which saved farmer a lot of money because they used to make more money. In the process, we used to charge 20% as a commission for getting their product sold, and that covered up our expenses. And then we were able to be profitable from the first day. So you could be profitable with a bootstrap startup as well. It's not like you can't be. So again, it's more like a perspective thing. But then what holds true is definitely the fact that the power to make impact, or if you're coming from a background where you're making us you're starting up something because you want to change things around you, offer convenience or innovate on something. I think investors and VCs kind of delay that process because then it's mostly about numbers from set that point onwards. So that's answering your first question. I hope that I was able to answer that properly. If not, you can ask me again about your second question of what were my takeaways. I think I already talked about it previously. I think the biggest takeaway I had was working with a team and trusting strangers on taking decisions, because personally, for me, it's very difficult. So I come from, I'm like, personally, I'm like in this mindset, I'm a very perfectionist kind of a guy. So I really want the things that I work on to be really, really perfect, before somebody looks at it. I could spend like 2 weeks with like every day where I don't sleep, or maybe I sleep for only 2 hours a day, but to make sure that the thing that I'm presenting has to be perfect. It has no flaws. And then when you work with different people, so they have different mindsets. They just want to push things faster, and then you just these are things that you just can't accept with. You're like, I mean, what am I doing in this place? So that happened when I was in that program, and it frustrated me. And for a moment, I thought that I'm in the wrong place. I shouldn't be here, right? I went with the flow, and then eventually I realized that what this thing is making me understand is maybe something I would never understand in my life or learn in my life, because I'm not in that position anymore. I'm no longer in college. I'm no longer a guy who just entered the practical field. I'm already there. I'm already leading a team. I'm already leading a department or a company. So at this point, I would never have somebody who would go ahead and take control from me, right? I mean, I would, and this is what happened at the boot camp. I didn't have the control. I couldn't control people. I couldn't control what we were, how we were approaching things. But yeah, I mean, eventually, how it ended out is that during the last some weeks, I kind of took control of things, and this was the most important takeaway for me. Without being in control, but in some way understanding how to still control the thought process of people and how things are going forward. I think that was the biggest takeaway that I had for myself. That's something I could use for, it's a lifelong thing. I could go and work with three different people and still not, act like a leader. Because usually what happens is that once you're in that position, you start giving orders, right? You are like, okay, this is what needs to be done. This is how you need to do it. And then people sometimes don't like it, right? I mean, they're like, we're not your employees. Why are you, why are you ordering us? And then you are like, that's what happens with 90% of the startups, the co-founders and everyone. They just kind of don't go along together at a certain point. They're like, we are co-founders. You can't tell me what to do. If there's something that I would term as my takeaway, would be that, being with the team, controlling things, taking things forward, and yet not be in a position where people would find it offensive. So you also understand their thinking process, you understand what they're coming from, and based on that, you make sure how you're going to control the whole environment and still get the results that you want without offending anyone. And I think that was the best skill that I acquired during that program. And I'm sure it's going to be different for everyone. The way these programs are programmed, it's like whatever your things are, it would usually base on that. For me, this was the one.
Thank you so much for doing such a good job answering both of those questions. So, to your second answer, honestly, I was on mute, but I'm laughing because this is also my takeaway from the boot camp. And I appreciate you talking about that balance between, having control over the situation where you need to without coming across as offensive. And for me, I kind of put it that I can be a bulldozer. And I don't mean to be. It's because I care and because I'm passionate. But I definitely saw the other side of that at boot camp. I kind of came face to face with myself. So that really meant a lot to me that you shared that, because I completely agree with you that one of the key ingredients in a good team, any good team, is having that trust. And trusting strangers is a difficult thing for many of us, I think. And then going back to your first answer, I really appreciate that, you kind of took us through the differences that you've seen about the passion drying up. That is actually something I'm not experienced in, but I do worry about, when you do take funding like that. And Andrew actually has kind of a follow up question to that. He was asking if community driven entrepreneurship is, kind of important or imperative, because it sounds like what you're talking about is building these deep relationships while creating and building a sustainable business. And no, Andrew, you're not monopolizing questions.
I'm just gonna answer that, Andrew, and it's good that you brought that up. But before I do that, just the point that you made, Nancy, about the dream and the trust. This is a very interesting short story about the boot camp. So basically, our team, the coach and the mentor that we had, they termed our team as at the bottom of the table. They're like, I mean, we don't know what you guys are doing, man. This team where everyone has they have their things sorted out, and we have like the pitch is gonna go on like in a week's time, and you guys don't even know where you were heading. I mean, we were in a very bad shape, right? I mean, people not agreeing with each other, and it was just a very bad situation to be in. And then we ended up being voted as the second best idea and the second best team in the whole boot camp, and that happened in the last 2 3 weeks, right? And the way it kind of nothing changed. The only thing that changed was that I just kind of changed myself. I'm sure that my team members did the same. We just changed ourselves a little bit, and we kind of came together at this particular idea we were working on. We just let everyone do what they were good at, and at the same time realize this thing which I talked about earlier, of controlling things without people understanding that you're controlling things. And yeah, I mean, that's how it ended up, from a team which we all thought we are not even going to make it to the final pitches, to a team that actually pitched in the final round, and we got voted like as the almost the best idea, and the best team out of all the other teams. Like people, the mentors and everyone like mesmerized by our pitch. And I think, yeah, that's how it goes if you do work together, and if you start kind of trusting a little bit, even if not trusting, like kind of change yourself instead of trying to change people, and change yourself based on that particular environment you are in. I think that goes a long way. So about you, Andrew, no, I'm not really talking about getting into relationships to build a sustainable business. I'm just talking about the typical route an entrepreneur would take, right? I don't understand the idea of actually, I mean, doing business. I really think doing business and then changing the world or changing things around you are two very different things. They just don't go together really well, and they shouldn't go well together. I mean, creating an impact is more about innovation. This is more about what Elon Musk did with electronic cars, or what Tesla did with with bulbs. So and light. I mean, I'm sure all of these things were kind of attached with business, but then it didn't drive through revenues, right? I mean, they were not, I'm sure when Isaac Newton came up with gravity, he was not thinking that, when I'm going to go out in the public and talk about gravity, I'm just going to charge them this particular amount of money, and I'm going to walk away with an IPO in the next 4 years where I will be valued at a $4 billion. I mean, that was never the part of the process. The process was, okay, so, this apple just fell down, and I need to tell people this is what, the reason why it falls down and doesn't fly up is because we have gravity. So it was, and that created a lot of impact, and that changed things. That changed how we looked at things from that point onward. So that's more about changing things or creating impacts. And then you have businesses. So when you start a business, I mean, that is definitely not an innovation, right? I mean, that doesn't have to be an innovation. Innovation is more about making, creating convenience for people around you and yourself, finding solution to problems. It doesn't have to be, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously, people do this and then charge money. I mean, it's a kind of a business that you go on with it for. But then again, we would hardly find some examples which we can talk about right now, where people actually made a name for themselves doing something where the primary objective was to earn money, because business is all about making money, right? And I think creating impact, changing lives, or changing the world, because even if you do change something in front of you, even if you change how the way your room lights up, that's kind of a, you have changed, you've brought a change into the world, at least for yourself. Now if people do follow you and and get the same thing from you for their light setups, yeah, if the whole world does it, you change the entire world. You change how the world look at light. So that has nothing to do with how you make money, whereas business is more about getting into something and then only because you want to make money. So you want to sell clothes maybe, or maybe you want to innovate on that process as well. You not sell clothes but then digitally, or something like that. I mean, so they're like two very different things. That's what I think. I'm not sure if I got your question properly, but if I did, let me know.
I think you definitely did. Thank you so much.
Did want to be mindful of the time and just wrap us up with the final question that we like to ask. And you can take this in whatever manner best suits you. What do you think has been the best lesson or takeaway from your journey so far? This could be, words of wisdom that you took from someone else, or a favorite quote, or just something you thought of along the way.
It's a very difficult question to answer, to be really honest. I mean, summing it all up, I have to like sum the whole thing up. It just have to be the fact that, I mean, you just focus on what you're doing, not the end result. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. I mean, at a certain point in my life, I was really focused on the end results. I was like, okay, this is what I need to do, and this is where I need to be. This is how much I need to earn. This is the car I want, or this is the house I want. This is the life I want. And kind of like, it always disappointed me at some point. I was not really happy with the end results. I mean, it always happens. You do get, I mean, you get good results, but then it's not what you were expecting it to be. Then I realized someone, my mentor guided me in a way, with these thoughts. I mean, I knew about this before. It's not like something really rocket science, but I never just realized what it means. And then eventually I got into the habit of just doing things and not caring about the end results. That turned out beautiful. I just do things. I don't care about if it's going to make me rich, if it's going to make me feel better. I just do it. Maybe I just see that, a company can earn 20% more than what they're earning right now, and I'll just go in and help them out. I don't care if they're gonna pay me, if they're gonna just have me on board. If I'm gonna fail or succeed, maybe I fail and I wouldn't get any more consultation gigs in the future. So I just don't think about it anymore. I think I see a gap, I go, I fill it in, and 99% of the time it just works out because I don't care about the end results. So I'm so much involved in the process of just sorting or solving that particular thing out. It eventually does goes my way. And again, this is a very difficult question. They're like, I'm still learning. I'm still a student. There's so much more to learn. And thank you so much to have to host me here. I still think there's a long way to go in the future, and we are all learning together. I'm learning every day, like, and I still have to read a lot of books and stuff that I don't do, which I need to do as well. So I'm not sure, Nancy, if the words of wisdom were what you were looking for, but I think that's the biggest takeaway for me personally. Not thinking of end results, but just doing things which you think might change things for other people and make life better for them.
No, that was great. I know it's a question that kind of catches people off balance sometimes, but it's just really it meant to be a little bit off the cuff, and I think that was great advice. I think sometimes telling myself to focus on what's right in front of you and one thing at a time is my own version of that. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your thoughts and everything you shared with us today and taught us, Qazi. Thank you so much for making time for this.
No, thanks a lot. First of all, you are most welcome. Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me over. It was wonderful being on the platform. Thank you so much for giving me the option to share my journey with you. And I actually learned a lot of things on the call. I loved it, man. Thank you so much again for having me over. And I'm going to be around if you guys need me for anything. I have joined the community. So, yep, that's pretty much it from my side.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.